all, welcome Audrey. So Audrey and I met at a talk that I was doing, and a friend introduced us because she had one of her kids work with Audrey, and she just could not sing her praises more. And Audrey is so fun. You're so easy to talk to, and I've learned so much from you, and I'm really grateful that you're here. And I'm just going to read a little bit about you, and you can add to this, but Audrey is a licensed therapist and body image expert, and her clinician focus is on females and how they can build up their confidence from the inside out. And Audrey has almost solely worked with females and their struggles with body satisfaction and mental health. She wants mothers to be aware of the risks young females face today, including eating disorders, anxiety, and depression. Her passion is to shed light on mental health and break through stigmas. She is the owner of Simply Be, a private practice focused on mental health and prevention counseling. And you can reach her. She put on here on the chat, it's Audrey at simplybe2bs.net, and then her Facebook group is Simply Be with 2 E's, right? Did you want to add anything, Audrey?
No, that's how everyone can contact me. And there's also a website that they can find through the Facebook page. But I think the Facebook page is really the quickest, easiest way to find me, or my email address.
Okay, great. So I just want to launch in. How did you get involved in what you're doing now with body image, and what led you to focusing in on working with girls?
Yeah, so originally I got into the field when I was 19, believe it or not, because I was a Division I volleyball player at Loyola University Chicago. And for 2 years I played, and then my last 2 years, unfortunately, I got hurt. And I had to take a medical release, which gave me the privilege to continue my scholarship, but then the free time to sort of reinvent myself. And so I was interested in psychology, and got to volunteer at Lurie's Children's Hospital in Chicago in their partial hospital and inpatient psychiatric unit. And so really there, I was fortunate enough to sit across from a licensed clinical social worker, which is now my degree and my license. And I really got to see her change people's lives. And she got to be sort of the boss of the round table and really make some executive decisions and advocating for the families to the medical team. And so I realized that I wanted to be an advocate and a liaison at that point. And so in my career, I've always found myself working in the higher levels of care, whether it be inpatient or treatment centers. And this past year, I went into my own practice because of life events, becoming a mother of 2 myself, and that I needed to make a pivot and a shift. So for me, I really wanted to then get into my passions. So I've been working primarily with eating disorders in the clinical setting. And of course, that is heavily body image driven for most eating disorders, although not all. And so since being in the practice, I have enjoyed being somewhat of a mentor to females and males with eating disorders or body image struggles. I've been expanding another arm of my practice into just general decision making, and that shares a lot of the similar features of body image, which is self-empowerment, control, finding your voice, making sure that you're living a life of values. So I've taken a pivot in my career and added decision making on top of my practice, and that's been supported by the pursuing my Master's of Business Administration, my MBA in leadership training. So I'm now getting trained in the business world, which I've learned that the business world of leadership really mirrors therapy.
Yeah.
Very closely. And so I'm realizing that strategy and leadership is the same thing as therapy and body image and decision making. And so I found this a really cool niche between the business world and therapy. And people are really, I think, understanding that there's benefits of both, and I'm trying to marry them, and people are seeing it. And so I've gotten a great response. And now I'm fortunate to have some platforms like yours and others at schools and nonprofits really trying to communicate this idea of promoting and advocating for living a life that we want to be present for and living a life of our values while being successful.
I want to hear from you. I think moms would be interested in knowing this. What are when girls come into your office, what are some of the common struggles that you are seeing? What are they talking about? What are they struggling with? Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, the first thing when I'm seeing a new client is that they're talking about other things, not their bodies and not the food, because that can be so secretive or private for people that in the beginning of the sessions, when I'm first meeting someone, they're coming into the session talking about what we all experience, which is stress, anxiety, depression, being overwhelmed, feelings of needing to be perfect, feeling like if they don't succeed 100%, that means they're a failure. And so I think the first thing that everyone comes in with is the commonality that they're struggling, and they're struggling with performance. And so we realize that how they're operating in I call it their job at school, is their 8 to 3, their job, they're operating at a very high level performance. You think about maybe a high level exec needing to constantly be on, constantly being graded at a high competitive environment. And that's what our schools are. And so realizing that their stress levels are what they're leading with in my sessions, and the body image and the other things that may be going on is really not the primary conversation, because I know and they know that that's really the behavior that we see, or that's the thoughts that we're sharing. But under the iceberg of what's happening, we all share fears. We all share feeling powerless or out of control. And that's what people are leading with. And then, of course, that can result in body image, but it can result in substance abuse. It can result in self-injury and all those things. So body image is just one of the many ways these issues can surface above that water.
So one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, Audrey, is because so often moms in the community are talking about this issue, that their daughter or their son is struggling with self-esteem issues. They're not feeling like they're fitting in. Social media can be such a part of it. They're depressed. They're feeling anxious. They're saying they're chubby and they feel fat and they don't feel attractive. And I think that it's something that all of us are seeing with our kids, that they're so stressed out now. They're feeling, even their worlds with all the social media and all the distractions, they don't have a lot of space to just be. And, it's continually, I know for myself, even with social media, I can get on there and I'm using my Photoshop, and you can make yourself look thinner and you can make your wrinkles go away and all this pressure. And I'm feeling it. Does any other moms out there feel it too? Or we're comparing ourselves. We see this family on there and they look like everything's perfect and they're all happy. And we think, gosh, what's wrong with me? Where you're not really seeing the real people. It's images. And so do you feel like that the social media, how are you seeing that play a role in all of this with working with your clients?
I've noticed that it's what I call a contributing factor. It's a piece of the puzzle, and it seems to be getting a lot of the blame for our body image issues in our culture. And I'm just not sure that we're looking at the whole picture like we should be, because it is a piece and it's an important piece. A lot of what's happening is when I take a picture of my family and when I take a picture of myself, what I want to do is I want to feel really good about it. So if I want to feel really good about something, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create that look, right? Because that's an easy way to feel good. If I can create a filter, or if I can put on extra makeup, or if I can try to lose some weight, if I can see something that's going to make me happy, I'm going to do it. That makes a lot of sense. And so I think we're informed by our culture and by our families that if you can see something and change it, you should, and that will make you happy. But I think
that's not a bad thing, is what you're saying.
It's not a bad thing, but then what happens is it might start to compensate for feelings that we have that are insecurities, low self-esteem, fears that we're not good enough. So when we cross that line into compensating, so trying too hard to look perfect or trying to diet just right to lose that weight, and it's compensating. So there's nothing wrong with makeup and clothes and filters, but when you're compensating for something deeper, that's when it becomes problematic. And so I'm not going to say that all filters are bad. I use filters.
Good. Who's happy? So
I use filters myself.
Using filters.
Mm-hmm. And that's great. And so if that makes you happy and that makes you create this history on social media that you can look back on in your memories, and people are using social media as a photo album to share with their kids someday. People are sharing stories on their Facebook pages with long paragraphs because they know that that's going to be time-stamped in history. And so people are using this in ways that are not harmful or hurtful. What becomes harmful is then when people are doing it to a point that they're trying to mask and cover up something, making something deeper. So these things could be feeling out of control in your life, powerless, devalued, unworthy, you don't belong. If you're posting out of a place of being unbelonged, and so and that, can I just say that's a made up word? I Googled unbelong, it doesn't exist. I think it should.
Like it. We can start
unbelonging. That's right. So if we're kind of posting from these insecurities, then it's not healthy. But if we're posting because we want to timestamp our history, or we want to share our photos because we're in a great, happy mood and we want to look great and happy in the photo, there's nothing wrong with that. It's where it's coming from that's most important. You know, your self-esteem is kind of like a cup of water. If you can flash and dump a bunch of water in that cup really, really fast and feel really, really good, that's your 1,000 likes. But as fast as you can fill that cup, that's as fast as it dumps out. So what we want to do with our daughters is we want to constantly be filling that cup up and not flashing it and flooding it with water, but gradually building it up so that as much as when you gain that self-esteem over time, you can't lose it overnight. And what the likes are doing is flooding that cup, filling it up super fast, feeling really, really good, but that doesn't last for very long.
Yeah. It's like buying a new outfit.
Yes, it is. It is. So again, our body image insecurities can come out in likes, or for us, can come out in shopping, buying that jacket, buying that coat, buying that purse. We get a flash of self-esteem for a second, just like our daughters are with 1,000 likes. We can connect and relate on that level, but we know if we get it too fast, we'll lose it as fast as we get it. And so that thousands of likes should just be a drop in the bucket. It should not be the whole thing.
Okay. That makes perfect sense. I love that analogy. It doesn't last. It's not.
It doesn't last. Right. And it's okay to have. If it's a drop in the bucket, it's really not going to make or break the person. Mm-hmm. But again, if we're underlying with anxieties and depressions or insecurities, then these things are going to be, we call it marked distress. These things are going to be very difficult for someone to get over. But someone who has that cup that's being filled up day to day, they can take a hit once in a while if that photo doesn't get enough likes. Mm-hmm. And I would urge those girls to not delete it, to tolerate the 50 likes or tolerate the 100 likes, because a lot of them will go delete it if it doesn't get the number that they want in their mind. And so I would really encourage girls to tolerate that reality that people aren't always going to like you.
I was in a dressing room with my daughter. It was about a year ago, my teenager, and she was trying on something for a dance, and she remarked, "Oh, my thighs are so fat." And to which I said to her, "No, you're beautiful. You look, great." And she said to me, "Mom, you're saying that to me, but I hear you criticizing your body." And that was a real wake-up call for me that I need to stop doing that. I pick up on a lot of how we feel about ourselves, even if we're not even saying it. So I want to talk about that just briefly, how much of how we value ourselves and we see ourselves has to do with what our girls are, how they're feeling about their bodies. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, there was this really powerful Dove video that's on YouTube. you can email me, anyone who's on the group that wants that video. And the video has the mom and the daughter in 2 different rooms, and they ask the mom they ask the mother the same questions as they ask the daughters. And they ask, what do you love about your mom? And they both said the same thing mom said the same thing, what they love about themselves, and then what the daughters love about them in terms of like, what do they do for you? How do they love you? And then they ask the moms and the daughters, what don't you like about yourself? What the mom said that they don't like about themselves, the children also said they didn't like about themselves. And it was different, very different, just depending on the family. So if the mother didn't like her slanty eyes, the young daughter didn't like her slanty eyes. If the mother didn't like her hips, the daughter didn't like her hips. And then they showed the mothers a video of the daughters. And it obviously is really striking, because you see that your daughter is parroting the same body parts that the moms are. And it can be called, there's different terminologies for it. So, and it's important to catch yourself when you're doing this. And it could be, I call it fat chatter.
Yeah.
That just chatter in the house, that sort of undertone that your body's not right. You ate too much. You feel too full. Oh, you need to compensate the next day for what you ate that day. There's something else, a lot of women and men body check. So an example of this would be, you pinch your sides, you cover parts of your body to see what you look like.
Yeah.
Yes. You touch your stomach. You can
look
measure
at ourselves in the mirror.
Yeah. And so these things, these body checkings can become really problematic for young girls, because they will spend so much time in the mirror body checking that it becomes a habit. It can become almost compulsive. They could do it after meals. So then you can get into the eating disorders. And so 2/3 of eating disorders are triggered by dieting. We cannot be living in a diet culture, because we then are expecting to then create more and more of the eating disorders. And so the diet culture, the fat chatter, the body checking, all of this is telling our daughters that they need to change to then be like us. And that's really scary.
We're teaching them that gives them greater worth, that gives them greater value if they look a certain way.
Well, it's objectifying. If we objectify ourselves, we are teaching our daughters to objectify themselves, that their worth is their body. And we know that with objectifying young girls, it creates them to be vulnerable for eating disorders or abuse or other traumas. And so we're really trying to see the bigger picture of our body comments as objectifying. And I think if we can rally around each other and create that sort of tribe, that we're not going to let that be in our culture anymore, we can get away from it. And I think we can do it pretty quickly, because people are really resilient. But it takes a tribe of people, friends, family, who are all changing their words and their comments, including grandma, right? Yeah. Including the higher generations that are saying, oh, you look great, you must have lost weight. And those comments at holidays. And so it starts, from the oldest generation.
Interesting. That is something that comes up all the time. You look great. You look like you lost weight.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It happens all the time. It happens to me. And it catches me off guard when I don't have my therapy hat on and people make body comments towards me. It catches me off guard, because it's almost like, what is your right to comment on my body? Why is that why do you get that? Why do you get that? Why do you get that chance to comment on me when it should be about so much more than my body?
Yeah.
And so I struggle. I still do, because you don't want to hurt, you don't want to offend people. And at the same time, you don't want to stand for it.
Well, and that's so, somebody tells me I look like I lost weight and I feel great. I'm like, oh, what are you doing?
Yeah. And some people, when, losing weight is a whole nother conversation of how do you lose weight? When is it okay to lose weight? And it's always a very touchy conversation. And in the eating disorder profession, there's a lot of debate over dieting, health at every size, intuitive eating, meal plans. There's a lot in our field that are really rich conversations about how do you do this without creating harmful results from dieting or or encouraging weight loss. And so in my experience, when I'm working with someone, they will say the compliments feel good, but in the back of their mind, they say, how do I keep this up? This is exhausting. Or you have no idea what I've done to keep this weight off. Or they don't even feel the compliment because they've worked so hard to meet that the person makes it sound easy. And the person inside that gets that compliment is just thinking, oh, so now people notice. Now I have to keep this up. And at what length do I have to keep this up? And if it's not a long-term plan for the person, it can get really, really challenging for them. And then they start to feel bad about themselves when they can't maintain that diet.
Looks and clothes and all of that was really important growing up. Your weight. And I do remember it felt so empty. And I wanted to be valued for so much more than that. That was just like an empty, facade, right? Like wearing a mask but people not really seeing who we are deep down. Mm-hmm. So let's go, we'll go to the slide. So body acceptance. Okay. You want to explain these a little bit to us, Audrey?
So these slides are written by a wonderful woman, not the slides, sorry, the content's written by a really wonderful woman, Catherine Cotone, and she's really been a pioneer in body image and writing really good resourceful books. So I pulled her content and put it into a slideshow for a recent presentation, and I'm sharing it here now. Body acceptance is just this idea of mindfulness that in this moment, my body is what it is, and accepting it for what it is, not trying to change it, not trying to look into the future of what it could like or in the past of what it used to like, but just saying this is my body right now. And the reason why this is so important is because this then creates a sort of a relaxed effect in the brain. And when you start to relax about your body, you can actually create new neural pathways with different thoughts and different practices to treat your body better. So what you first have to do is accept it for what it is before you go to try to change it. If you try to change something that you don't like or you're unwilling to accept, then you end up burning energy and becoming really stressed or upset about it. And so just trying to pull it back to in this moment and working on mindfulness and meditation. And that can really help with that in the moment discomfort you have, but then sitting with it because that is the reality of your body in this moment.
Okay. I just want to throw out there real quick, Calm, the Calm app, CALM, is a great app. And I tell a lot of moms about it. They use it. They have it for self-compassion, acceptance, for breathing, for mindfulness, and it's really wonderful. And teenagers really like it too. So
Calm is great for teenagers. Headspace is really good for adults. Mm-hmm. And then I haven't posted an article yet. But there's an article that I'm going to post on the Simply Be Facebook page, and it's I think it's 12 apps for teens and tweens for meditation and relaxation. So that's
I love that. I'll share it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
tell me. Yeah, that's great. I love it. All right. So are we done? You want me to click it?
Yeah.
Appreciating. Okay. Body appreciation.
So body appreciation is, I think, teaching our daughters that there is diversity in bodies and that we are not all one shape, one color, one size, and helping our daughters see diversity in our world. And depending on the community that you come from, you can get a little bit of an incubator of like a group think of this is exactly how bodies and people look in my community. So I encourage you to get out of your community, visit other communities, do light travel, and just break away from that community that you have to show them. Brene Brown calls it a social bunker, but get out of that social bunker and expose yourself to other people and other types of people, and realizing and having appreciation for every body type that is out there, and then starting to be grateful for what you have and using that as a way every night to write a grateful list, but use that as a way to appreciate what you have as opposed to looking at what you don't have.
And just thinking, you even think about how our bodies move and being grateful for that, and that I can get out there and I can walk, and, all those things, that just thinking about even how we're grateful for that.
Yes.
Yeah. Working on loving our bodies, however they are. Okay. All right. Self-compassion.
Self-compassion. So what happens in our brain is that when we are derogatory or negative or beat ourselves up about our thoughts, or sorry, about our bodies, what we do is we're increasing these cortisol stress hormones. And what we do is we're flashing our brains with stress hormones when we think about our bodies. What that does is that locks us up, gets us defensive, and we won't think of other possibilities, or we won't have what we call a growth mindset. What we're trying to do with self-compassion is do the opposite of that derogatory talk. You're compassionate towards yourself. You reduce the cortisol stress hormones. What you do then is you're open to create new neural pathways, manage the reward system, and be open to new habits and new practices that are long-term. This cortisol that you get flashed with, or other hormones that you're getting flashed with when you're stressed, you're looking for a short-term fix. So you're going to start to diet or body check. Mm-hmm. So what we're trying to encourage is we're trying to create self-compassion that then gets away from closing the brain off and actually opens the brain. And that's where new habits will form that are longer term and healthier. So it sounds counterintuitive to be nice to yourself when you want to kind of beat yourself up. That's exactly what you need for your brain to change.
Okay, so I could think of an example. Like I have just noticed whenever I feel like now I look in the mirror and I want to criticize something about myself, I'm actually saying out loud the exact opposite. Especially when I'm around my daughter, I'll say, oh my gosh, I love my hair, or whatever it is. I try to really model saying kind things to myself. And that's kind of like what you're talking about, right?
Yes. Loving kindness. It can kind of, people call it like a woo-woo, like loving kindness. What is that soft thing? What's that sort of cheesy skill? But actually loving kindness does so much to the brain that people are noticing in like restorative yoga or yin yoga or other practices, that if you can relax your brain, that's where then you can start to make changes, as opposed to trying to force a change out of stress. And we know that that will only briefly motivate you, but it cannot motivate you long term unless you're kinder and more relaxed. And it may sound counterintuitive, especially in our Western culture, but that's where the change really is.
I really like that. So spirituality.
This is just knowing that you have there's a bigger purpose in life, and that our love handles or our large thighs, our flabby arms are not our biggest problems. And so with that grateful list every night, and getting out into other communities and trying to be charitable and to donate and just to practice a bigger sense of purpose, we're going to realize that being obsessed and focused with our bodies in relation to the world really isn't as important as we think it is. And so spirituality can do that for you, but in a very kind way that promotes really positive changes without comparing and just judgmental and getting kind of mean towards yourself. Spirituality is a very important one. And this can, obviously, we know can be in 1,000 different ways being spiritual. You just have to find that for yourself.
Practice number 5, addressing basic physical needs.
Yeah. So I myself can get stuck in this if I'm out of, I don't want to say balance, because I don't believe that there's such thing as balance when you're working.
Sorry. I don't know.
That's okay. That's okay. But the basic needs that when you're hungry, you eat. When you have to go to the bathroom, like as a therapist, that is a joke, but that's reality. Like when you have to go to the bathroom, you need to go to the bathroom. When you need to eat, you need to eat. If you're tired, you need to rest. And really just listening to those basic needs, because if we're not connected with our basic needs, we're going to miss intuitive signs that our body's sort of telling us to pay attention to. And this is something that I think we overlook. And self-esteem creates burnout, creates anger, creates conflict. And we're talking about mothers and daughters. And yes. So the mothers have to model self-care to their children. So that means taking time out for themselves and taking care of themselves away from the family, and that their daughters can see that, and the daughters can see that it's okay to take time out from their work, which is their school, to take care of themselves, and they're not overworked and overstressed.
I do find working with moms that we put ourselves last so often, and we think that we're actually being selfish oftentimes when we take care of ourselves, but really, or it's taking us away from our family, where really that is actually helping our daughters.
Yeah. And we could have a whole other conversation about how daughters really don't want moms making them their job. Daughters want moms on their own jobs, whether that be projects or hobbies or interests away from them. And that is a very big topic in my sessions with daughters and mothers.
It could just be too much. They're like, okay, back off, live your own life, you know, so.
Either they want to solve their own problems or they've never had practice solving their own problems.
Exactly.
So it is about giving them that space for a little bit of trial and error. And it's okay to react instead of be proactive when it comes to raising our daughters, that you can react to mistakes and not try to prevent them from happening. And that's a hard way to sort of sit with raising, children that are becoming adults, but that's the only way they learn.
It is. It's hard for us to watch our kids struggling or feeling some pain or whatever it is, and we want to get in there and fix it. But really, when we're allowing them to solve their own problems, that we're actually believing in them, which increases their confidence level.
Yeah. So. Intuitive eating in general is just mindful eating. And there's apps out there where you can do mindful eating where you're pacing yourself and you're just really experiencing the food, slowing down, appreciating it. Because what we're doing at times is either scarfing food because we're just not mindful of it, or we're mindlessly grazing on it. And so intuitive eating is mindfulness. So part of healthy exercise is just using your body, because what's really interesting, there was a study done of 10 to 17-year-old females, multicultural females, and they were asked to throw a baseball in a gymnasium against the wall. And those who were body conscious had poorer body movement than those who were not body conscious. So what that tells us is with body image comes poor body movement. And so you could do the inverse. If you improve body movement and comfort, you can improve body image. And that's why it's so important to have healthy exercise be in the sort of daily regimen. And it does not need to be weight loss or calorie burning driven. It just needs to be movement in the skin that you're in, so that then it retroactively improves body image thoughts. And that study was really interesting.
Oh, that is. Wow.
And so this is really just watching the thinking trap. So think about getting sucked into something that you start thinking about dieting and you think about weight loss. And it's a thinking trap because when you start thinking about your vacation, that's where the thinking trap starts to happen. Our daughters get that thinking trap when they start thinking about prom dress shopping in a couple of weeks. So when you get into a thinking trap, which is basically a hamster on a wheel, you never get out of it. What you have to do is work your way out. You have to consciously say, I'm in a thinking trap. How do I work my way out? How do I distract myself? Who do I need to talk to? Because I got caught in this trap. I didn't know how it happened. I didn't know why it happened, but I know I'm in it now and I need to work my way out. And that's really, really important. The other thing to think about is when we are negative about our bodies, we falsely attribute negative things that happen because of our bodies. It's called the false attribution error. And so when we're feeling really bad about our stomachs, we're going to project out into the world that bad things are happening. We're not good enough. People don't like us. If you could just lose weight, fit in, because you're falsely attributing it to your stomach. Now, everyone has a different part that they really focus on. So we know that it's not reality, that the body is the fault. It's not the faulty part. It's actually the attribution we've created at some point in our life.
Like looking for evidence to, we can, like, let's say I don't feel smart, and then I'm going to be looking for that evidence to prove that people don't think I'm smart. Is that kind of like what you're saying?
Yep. So the emotion mind is basically a metal detector on the beach, and you're constantly scanning the beach for evidence, like to sort of like that magnet, sort of finding that gold. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to catch ourselves when we're having that emotional sort of urge or that emotional place and say, okay, I know I'm doing this now. I'm mindful. How do I walk my way out? And you're not beating yourself up for how you got there, but you're just saying this is what it is. And now I need to step back and realizing that our brains do things and we're not responsible for automatic thoughts, but we're responsible for the way we respond to them.
I'm going to take us back. Well, you know what I love about that too is asking ourselves in that moment when we're doing that and we're ruminating, that we can think about, okay, what do I need right now? What do I need to, and oftentimes I find for myself, it is the self-compassion piece. It is the noticing, okay, I'm criticizing myself because my stomach is hanging over my pants or whatever it is, and thinking, just changing that to that inner voice to something that's kind and self-compassionate.
And I know a lot of moms are sort of asking, well, how do I help my daughter with all of this? But you can't help your daughter until you've figured it out yourself. So we inadvertently have to talk about the moms, and then we talk about their daughters, but we can't talk about their daughters if we're not role modeling and changing ourselves. And so the answer is not easy, and a lot of people want body image to be easy, and it's not. It's not easy. It's very insidious, and it starts with modeling in our culture, and it starts with being vulnerable and honest with our daughters.
Yes, and I agree, and I hate that, but that is so true. It's like inside out parenting, right? It does start with us. So here's a question. How do I approach my overweight daughter about her eating habits without it being about her weight? I always tell her it's not about weight, but more about her health, and that weight loss is just a side effect. I also relate it to myself as well because I am overweight too. Wait, there's a great question. So how would you answer that?
So I would first say that we don't necessarily need to add the last part of weight loss as a side effect, because then we're basically saying this is about how you feel, and if weight loss is a side effect, that's great. That last part really isn't helpful. So I would say to take that part out and just start talking about where the choices are coming from, because she might be choosing food choices out of lack of self-care or exhaustion. And then it might go into, why is she exhausted after school? What about school is too overwhelming for her to then come home and think about food choices? So peel back the onion a little bit and think about, okay, so what is happening in your process of choosing the food that we can correct? Is it self-care? Is it thinking ahead? Is it planning ahead? Is it that you don't want to think about food because it stresses you out? How do we help you feel less stressed? Do we need a meal plan? So it's taking away, first of all, it's taking away but weight loss is good, because then that's sort of, it's sort of implying that you need to diet, and just focusing on the choice and why she's vulnerable at the times of selecting food. Does that make sense?
So how do you have that conversation? Because that is a very vulnerable conversation to have with your daughter. And I think that as a mom myself, being afraid to focus in on that, I find sometimes it's more helpful if I'm just talking out loud about myself. Like I'm noticing I'm wanting to eat the whole cheesecake right now because I'm really stressed out. And yet I'm going to put it away. And I think what I'm really wanting to do is sit down and talk or connect or play a game or whatever that is. Or maybe I'm just feeling sad right now. Mm-hmm. So I try, when I'm doing that with my daughters, I try to do it where I'm talking about myself.
Right.
But I do notice being afraid to have those conversations because I think that it might shine a light on that I'm afraid to shine. So how would you tell the moms to have this conversation?
Mm-hmm. It depends. Every relationship is different. What I would say is, if it's in the heat of the moment, don't have the conversation. Just let just let it go. As long as they're not hurting themselves, you don't have to address it in that moment. Take a break. Maybe think about it yourself, talk to your partner, talk to your friends, meditate on it, pray about it, journal about it, find your message for your daughter, and then go back to them 12, 24 hours later and say, I've sat on this, I've thought about this, and I want to ask you one question about it. And if it's too much to talk about, we don't have to, but I just want to ask you this one question. Keep it short. Keep it sweet. Mm-hmm. And then you're just chipping away at the iceberg. You're not doing this one and done major epiphany. You're not having that moment. What you're doing is you're just being really mindful about the way you're having conversations with your children. And that's okay to take a break and to think about it. So to answer this question, again, I would say talk about the place she's at when she's making decisions. And if she's exhausted or if she's tired or she's angry, validate the emotion and validate the issue that's going on, and don't talk about the behavior, don't talk about the food, don't talk about the binging or the overeating. Talk about the emotions and talk about the triggers, because that's what's actually creating the behaviors, and that's actually under the iceberg, and that's what you're going to get real results from.
Okay. And also noticing, I think, if where is that showing up in our lives too? Right? It might not be the food, but it might be alcohol, or it might be some other soft addiction. And we all have soft addictions. Something we do, with our stress, and to be more mindful of that with ourselves as well.
Yeah, I think we're all trying to seek that satisfaction. And so we're trying to seek satisfaction through shopping or work or food. And if we can find that common ground with our kids through our values and through our commonalities, then there's no power differentiation. And when a child feels that there's a power differentiation, when you're talking about these emotional issues, they're going to shut down. And so it's your job to take a break until the dust has settled, and then come back to it and have follow through. And that really counts.
Because we get so emotional. We feel all this emotion when we're watching something happening with our kids, and then we can often react with that emotion. And then especially our tweens and teens are like, whoa, and it never works. They get very defensive. They shut down. They don't want to talk to us. So what I hear you saying is it's like we need to be working on our own reactivity first, like you said, the praying, journaling, meditating, so we're not coming in from that fearful place and that reactive place.
And so if we're mindful, we allow ourselves to make mistakes, and then we own up to the mistakes. We talk about the mistake, and we try to do better next time. Mm-hmm. So there's a great quote that says, I'm doing the best that I can, and I need to do better.
Yeah, I like to liken it to that whole growth mindset you said too. Like, I'm learning, every day I'm learning, every day I'm growing. Okay, I made a mistake, but that's okay. I can go back and I can apologize. I can have a redo. I'll often say to my kids, okay, I need to have a redo. Will you let me have a redo? And we laugh about it. That's always, a good way, to bring humor into it too. There was one other mom that was just saying she can just eat and eat and eat. So I say, I would like to have more too, but explain to her it's not hunger. It's just the food tastes good, and then I'm going to feel yucky if I eat more. And that might be where you're saying maybe it's that she's looking for comfort, right? Right.
So giving her other ways to feel comfortable away from food without telling her that you're trying to replace the food. So giving her comfort, giving her maybe a weighted blanket and a really good book as a birthday gift, or giving her money to buy apps that are for mindfulness, or inviting her on your evening walk and getting her talking. So without saying what you're doing, try to replace the issue. So if it's seeking comfort and she tells you it's out of comfort, give her other ways to get comfort, and she may not go for the food. Or if she's stressed after school and exhausted, maybe she needs a study hall at the end of the day. Maybe she needs to stop taking 3 APs and increase the study hall. or make sure she's eating at lunch and she's not using her classes to go into her lunch period. So problem solve the real issues and not the above the water iceberg tip of the eating habits, because something's going on deeper and lower that is what needs to be fixed, not the actual food choices in the moment. Because in the moment, that's just a power struggle waiting to happen.
Think that it's important to keep asking our kids and ourselves, what do we need right now? Like if one of our kids is having a meltdown, one of our teenagers or our tweens, I like to just stop and say, what do you think you need right now? Mm-hmm. And start training them as well to start thinking about listening to themselves. What might I really need? And sometimes they just need to be heard. They just want to have us listen to their emotions, because eating too is stuffing, I think of like kind of stuffing those feelings down. Yes. Rather than like just talking about being able to, if we can talk about what we're feeling and what's going on underneath the surface, the iceberg, then we can get that out and we don't feel that need, whatever that looks like, to have to seek those other things.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. I want you to say, tell us, Audrey, where they can reach you again.
So you can find me on Simply Be Facebook page, or my email address is audrey@simplybe.net. And we are having a workshop for mothers of tweens and teens with their daughters on April 21st in Libertyville, Illinois, which includes yoga and a quick discussion on body positivity and treating your body with kindness. And we are taking signups. You can find that on the Facebook page as well.
Okay, and Simply Be, and two E's.
Two E's, B-E-E.
I love that name. And we're, let me know, moms, I'll be sending you something if you're interested in being in a group, something like that we have so many different things that are available. And there's also, if you live in the Chicago area, there's a meetup that's going to be on the 22nd of this month. So I will be sending that out. You can, it'll be on the Moms of Tweens and Teens Facebook page about that as well. And then the freebie is that I am going to be doing a 30-minute free one-to-one, and I'm calling it Tweens and Teens Behind the Scenes Action Call with me. I thought that was kind of rhymed, but I will be contacting you. I have limited space, but for a 30-minute one-to-one call, and I can support you, whatever that looks like, and however, whatever you need, we can talk about that during the 30 minutes. So I'll be sending something out. Okay. Will you read us do you have that little sheet that you were gonna, I thought that would be a beautiful way to end.
So this was from one mom to myself, and I found this to be very helpful. So I'm happy to send it along as well. Tell your daughters how you love your body. Tell them how they must love theirs. Tell them to be proud of every bit of themselves, from the tiger stripes to the soft flesh of their thighs. Whether there's a little of them or a lot, whether freckles cover their face or not, whether their curves are splendidful or slim, whether their hair is thick, curly, straight, long, or short. Tell them how they inherited their ancestors' souls and their smiles, and their eyes carry countries that breath life into their history, that the swing of their hips does not determine their destiny. Tell them never to listen when bodies are critiqued. Tell them every woman's body is beautiful, because every woman's soul is unique. And that's by Nikita Gill.
I love that. Maybe if you can email that to me, I can make it available to the moms. And that we need to take that in too, right?
Yeah.
That can be to us as well. We're all daughters.
Yes.
So thank you, everybody, for joining us. And thank you so much, Audrey.
Thank you.
And yeah, I really appreciate it all. And you'll be getting an email from me and can we have those slides too? The slides that you sent?
Yes.
I can send that to them too. I have them, so I can send those to you also. Yeah. So, thank you, Anne. Yeah, great to have you on the call. I'm so glad that you called in.
Thank you for being patient with us and being with us.
Yes, it was. And we'll be doing more. So thanks so much. And Audrey, I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, sounds good. Bye, everyone.
All right. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.